This is All Things Fitness and Wellness, uniting industry thought leaders and fitfluencers on the mission to inspire innovation and encourage people to live a life fit and well. Brought to you by Fitness World, your fitness, your way. Visit fitnessworld.ca. Today, we hear from Canadian television personality Chloe Wilde. Now, Chloe always had an appetite for science and initially wanted to be a doctor, but it was the MuchMusic VJ Search that changed the course of her entire life. She's now a celebrated media personality with over a decade in the spotlight. However, along the journey, she has battled with her mental health, dealing with anxiety and disordered eating, and that ultimately led to the launch of Healthy is Hot. But it quickly transformed to a safe space for many. We're going to be learning all about it, but before we get to it, be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new episodes of the ATFW Industry Series every Monday and the Celebrity Series every Wednesday. This is ATFW. Here. First of all, Chloe, tell me about your early relationship with physical fitness and activity.
Honestly, health and wellness has always been a part of my life, but I don't think it was always for the healthiest of reasons. I was a very hyperactive child, and I often got into some trouble. So sports and fitness was a way for me to stay out of trouble and to make friends and to be part of something. I was raised by a single mom, and so she worked long hours to make sure that we could eat and go to field trips and wear clothing and the whole thing. So sports was a great way for her to know that I was like well taken care of outside of school hours. So I just always grew up playing team sports. I wouldn't call myself an athlete by any regards. I was never the star player of anything. But as far as I can remember, moving has always been a part of my life from when I was a young kid to a teenager and even now as an adult.
Through those formidable years, especially with how you grew up and how it, as you say, kind of kept you out of trouble, how did it help your mental mindset?
Yeah, I don't know if I can swear, but my mental health was
Go for it.
most of my life. My mental health was not in a good place until I got into my mid-20s. Yeah, you would think, but like at that age, I mean, conversations about mental health, they just weren't happening the way that they are now. Like I'm 33. So when I was a teenager, it's just not really something that was talked about. You were like, I was an athletic girl. And so I played in a lot of sports, but obviously you're still impacted by all the media. And at that time it was just magazines in the early days of reality television. And it was super detrimental looking back now to how so many of us saw ourselves and the way we loved ourselves and our self-worth. So yeah, I wouldn't say that sports or movement back then had an effect that I noticed, because now after many years of therapy, I look back and I was not in a very good place with my mental health as a teenager or a young adult. But I mean, I'm forever grateful for movement because it allowed me to meet some of my, closest friends. It allowed me some really amazing opportunities. And I feel like it was the starting days for my, love of movement in a way that brings you joy.
Obviously, you speak of how it was portrayed in the media at the time. You're somebody now that has had incredible involvement in the media. So let's talk about the early days of how you ended up traversing into that career path.
Geez, definitely was never part of the plan being in television. Not something I came home from school and was like, I'm going to be on TV. I can't wait. I was a big book nerd, big science nerd. My whole plan was to go to med school and to become a doctor without borders. That was this dream that I put up on a pedestal. And most of what I did up until the career switch was stepping stones to get me to that goal. And as someone who's very type A, once I get focused and I get laser focused on something, one of my faults is that I often will have blinders on to what other things are happening and how I'm actually feeling. So this is a perfect example. From grade 3 onwards, if anyone ever asked me what I wanted to be, I was going to be a doctor and I was going to travel around and I was going to help people. So I did my science studies. I went to McGill. I have a BSc in psychology and neuroscience. I wrote my MCATs. I had the opportunity to go to Stanford and experience a little bit of their med school. It was really incredible. And as I was getting my applications ready for med school, I just had this moment where I realized I don't actually know if this is what I want to do or if this is what I've told myself I wanted to do for so long, which is such a surreal thing because I was quite good. Like I was doing really well academically. But there was just something inside me that was saying like, I don't know, Chloe, like, I just don't know. And so instead of actually listening to myself, I was like, well, I guess I'll just go into nursing, and then I'll become a nurse practitioner, and then I'll open a clinic, and that's how I'm going to do what I'm going to do. So I go right into a nursing degree without taking a break. And at this point, I have, multiple jobs at all times to pay my way through school and to keep everything afloat. So you can imagine I'm just going full throttle, whether it's in academics or having part-time jobs, or I was on the cycling team at McGill. I had a great circle of friends. I was partying. I was doing all of the things, but something didn't feel right. But at that point, I just didn't know what that meant, or how to tune into it, or how to care for it. And so I went right into a second degree. And lo and behold, no surprise, I had a really, really, really bad burnout, and my mental health struggled and my physical health plummeted. And I'm super grateful for the team at McGill for recognizing that I wasn't coping well, even though on paper I had this big, beautiful life and I was this amazing student. And so they granted me a sabbatical to get healthier. And thankfully, like, my GPA wouldn't be affected. So it wouldn't be a blip in my type A, let's strive for perfection at all times mentality. So there I am. I'm supposed to be having a sabbatical. I'm supposed to be taking care of myself. I don't really know what that means. And all my friends are in med school or in nursing school. They're doing all these really cool things. And then there I am, just not feeling well. And I was like, didn't no idea who I was. Total identity crisis, very confused. I was like, wow, I've been able to do so much for so long, and now I just do nothing. And so I remember sitting on the couch in Montreal, where I was living at the time, just crying in my pajamas, very confused about where I was supposed to go in life, flipping through the channels. And then there was a commercial that just forever changed my life. And it was, I believe it was Scotty Willett and Lauren Toyota, two VJs at the time, hosting this commercial. And all I heard was, do you want to be the next MuchMusic VJ? And in that moment, Chrissy, I was like, fuck it. Why not? Like, I don't know what I'm doing anyways. So I put all of that energy and that academic intensity that I had put into McGill for like my 5 years at that point of being there, and I put it into living, breathing, and becoming all things MuchMusic. MuchMusic is an iconic, staple in so many of our childhoods, as it was mine. But then I just took it to a whole nother level. And I was like, you know what? Why not? There was something that was pulling me to it. And so I entered this reality show, and I didn't really have any expectations. I somehow made it onto the show. We traveled across the country. I ended up winning the title of MuchMusic VJ, which granted me a 3-month contract at the iconic HQ in Toronto. And so I ended up dropping out of school, selling everything I had, using that money to buy a piece of crap car for $500 off a very sketchy individual, and drove to Toronto to start a new life. And somehow 10 years have gone by.
Well, and you speak to obviously entering this reality show and what your state was going into that in regards to physical and mental health. We know that oftentimes production schedules can have quite a level of intensity to them. So how was your relationship with health and wellness as you were navigating through this really unexpected experience for you?
Oh, I was in absolute denial. I mean, honestly, now that I'm older, I struggled with anxiety, disorder eating, body image, like you name it. But just like undiagnosed until I was much older. And it reached an all-time high when I had my burnout. And then it reached an even greater high that I didn't even know was possible while I was on the VJ search, because all of a sudden I was in this unknown environment, with an unknown set of skills, surrounded by these amazing individuals that most of them had studied broadcast journalism. They felt confident in themselves. And at that point, I was the least confident version of myself in a world where you kind of need to at least be able to fake it till you make it. And somehow I was able to dig deep and do it. But my gosh, I recognize that it was really bad anxiety, but I felt like I couldn't eat because my stomach hurt too much. I couldn't eat because then I started shaking. Couldn't eat because then I wouldn't be able to focus. So I wasn't consuming nearly enough calories. And at that point I was already very underweight, but everyone just thought I was a runner. I was able to get by for so many years without anyone really ever knowing. And then by the time we traveled across the country and hit Ottawa, and that's where my mom lives, she saw me get off the VJ Search bus and she was holding this massive sign and it said Chloe for VJ. That was the hashtag I was using at the time to get votes. The dog was wearing a Chloe for VJ shirt. Like, it was a whole beautiful moment that my family showed up for me. And I got off the bus and her face just went from pure excitement to pure concern. You know, this is a woman who has known me my whole life. And she was just like, I don't know what is going on, because I've always been super independent. I moved out at a very young age. She was like, but something's going on, and whatever you decide to do, whether it's this or you go back to school, like, you got to do something. Like, you got to figure out how you're going to take care of yourself. You got to figure out how to like put your health first, because you're not going to be able to do anything if you continue down this path. And it was like the most intense wake up call I've ever had. And I don't know that it would have landed had it come from anyone else. And so that was actually the first night that I went to the gym and for whatever reason felt called to use the hashtag healthy is hot for the first time. And this is like very early days. Social media followers were non-existent. Like, it wasn't a thing for anyone except for myself. It was almost like a public promise to myself that I was going to strive for health. And back then, being hot was a word that was really like everywhere. Like, you wanted to be hot. Like, that was like a thing that for whatever reason, society made us want to be. And so I wanted to flip the script and be like, actually, healthy is hot. And the beautiful thing about healthy is hot is healthy looks different on everybody. And it changes as you grow. And so that was actually the first time healthy is hot as like an idea ever came. And it wasn't something that I knew would turn into something that I was so passionate about. But in that moment, it was like my saving grace. It was like what I hung my hat on and what I strived to follow and to have it be my North Star as I like started this new adventure.
So what changed for you in that moment then? Because now you're obviously getting more attention from the media side. And we know at that time in our lives, I know for myself, I'm a similar age to you, the messaging for women was very much, I mean, we've seen the headlines of like a Jessica Simpson is a great example that just got ridiculed. And she was like a completely healthy individual. So how did you navigate then this switch to healthy is hot in regards to doing that for yourself, especially after you've exhausted yourself across the country?
Yeah, to be honest, I never really cared what people thought about me. That was never why I felt the way I did about myself. I struggled with my mental health, and that's where it stemmed from. And I'm also very fortunate that in my like 10 years of doing this, I have almost never been trolled online. And I know how lucky I am to say that, because I work alongside some incredible women who have had to deal with a lot of negativity online. And so I count my blessings in that regard. And also, like, I got into media at 24. So at that point, I was like, I feel like if I would have gone in at 18, it would have affected me a lot more, this like idea of what you were supposed to look like. But because I got in a little bit older, it just didn't bother me at all. Like, I was just trying to figure out me, myself, and I, like, how can I get to a place where I feel happy? How can I get to a place where I feel confident? How can I work through my shit so that I can do this job? Like, you've done this job. Like, from the outside looking in, it is amazing and beautiful and glamorous. And it is all of those things, but it's also very challenging and very trying and very exhausting and requires a lot of output. And I think that's what makes it so beautiful. It's just like yin and yang of like the polar opposites of like giving and receiving. It's like such a special career. But it does require a lot out of you. And when my mom said that to me and I just started looking at myself, I was like, man, if I'm going to stick around and be here, like, I want to feel good and I want to have the energy to do all this. Like, at that point, I wasn't sleeping. I had no energy. I just like, I was a shell of myself. And now I was being thrust on this massive show. And I just decided to show up for myself, because no one else is going to do it for you.
Fitness World's 16 British Columbia high-value, low-cost gyms are committed to helping people reach their fitness goals, whatever those may be. Exercise and movement play a pivotal role in supporting people's overall health and wellness, and it is Fitness World's mission to provide the facilities, services, and amenities to help you achieve your fitness your way. Visit fitnessworld.ca for more information. So how did Healthy is Hot blossom from there, from a simple hashtag? What all of a sudden became the mission for you?
It was self-serving at first. I wanted to feel better. I needed to feel better. Like, it was no longer up for debate. Something needed to change because I was not in a good place. And so Healthy is Hot was something I just did for me. And I used Instagram as a way to hold myself accountable, that on, you know, on my grid, I would see that I used the hashtag a certain amount of times a week to showcase that I was eating well and I was moving my body. And then I started to see other people and individuals resonating with the hashtag and using it themselves. And I thought, you know what, maybe I'm not alone in this. You know, maybe there are other people who are also struggling, who are maybe needing the accountability to strive for health rather than to strive for a dress size, a number on the scale, or whatever it is that maybe drove you at one point that wasn't very health promoting. And then I started to realize that that was the truth. There were so many people out there. So we turned it into a website, and all of the volunteers still to this day that write are exactly just that. They're volunteers. They're just people who are passionate about health and wellness, want to share their stories, their expertise. And so that the website's been around forever, and it just serves as a safe space for storytelling within the health and wellness pillars, which are far reaching. You know, like at Healthy is Hot, we don't believe that health is just counting calories and going to the gym. It's your sleep health, it's your spiritual health, it's your career health, it does your job promote health, it's your mental health, it's so many things. And so it became this safe space for people to express themselves. And that was like when blogging was a thing. And then I started to get bored with the blogging thing. And I'm always someone who's like, okay, what's the next thing? And then it turned into a podcast, which still runs to this day. And we feature incredible women in the space of health and wellness who are entrepreneurs who just want to share their story and their tips and tricks along the way. Anyone who does work in this field comes from a place where they went through something, whether it was beautiful or challenging. And I think those stories are incredibly powerful. And then it turned into a show on Crave, which was very mind-blowing. And now the most recent thing is I've become a health and life coach, and I've turned my passion of my health and wellness and all my education into an app. And so now people can download the Healthy is Hot app, join the subscription, join the VIP membership, and essentially have a health and life coach right in their pocket. And the beautiful thing is, like, I don't think I'm done. Like, I think Healthy is Hot is forever going to be a part of my life. It changed my life. It saved my life. And I would be remiss to ever kind of turn away from it because it was so impactful in my own personal journey.
Well, you've really taken your journey and transformed it into this incredible act of service for others. And I'm sure it's this symbiotic relationship where they gain a lot from your insights. And I'm sure that you get a lot back as well. You spoke obviously to the fact that mental health wasn't really something in our years growing up that was well talked about. You reach this point where you're incredibly burnt out. Your life is changing simultaneously in this amazing way. How did you work to heal your relationship with self?
Therapy, yoga, Reiki. I mean, you name it. I've like dabbled in it, experienced it. I did a cacao ceremony. Like, I was so lucky to be invited to one. Like, the work is not done. Like, the work is really, really, really not done. It's just like growing up, I always felt like I had to put on a certain mask. I always had to show the world that, like, I was okay, I was strong, I was fine, that I didn't want for anything. When in fact, like, a big chunk of my life was challenging, and it was not easy. Yeah, it was really rough. It was really rough and tough, and I was afraid of showing that vulnerability. And so instead, I just pretended like everything was okay all the time. And then I got really good at pretending like everything was okay all the time. I think I even convinced myself for a really long time that the way I was feeling was normal. But it's not normal to have feelings of like sadness that is so just intense and confines you to your bed, and it's, you know, it doesn't have to be that challenging to have like such intense anxiety that you, in a moment of like light energy, you make all these plans, and then your anxiety kicks in and you bail on everything because it just feels like this insurmountable task. And so I had to kind of relearn how to get to know myself. And now I see all the things that I still, you know, anxiety is still very much a part of my daily life. Like, I'm no longer afraid of it. I'm no longer ashamed of it. It's something I talk very openly about because it's just a part of who I am. And if anything, it alerts me to things that are maybe not feeling well. And it's a good reminder to kind of step back and go into my mental health toolkit and do the things that work for me, or lean on mental health professionals. And I really hope that one day the conversation around mental health will change. And instead of seeing it as something that we lean on our mental health professionals or resources when we're in a moment of crisis, which is great. It's very important that they're there when people experience moments of crises. But why can't we treat it the way we go to the dentist? You know, you go to the dentist on a regular basis because that's going to be preventative. So that way you can have healthy teeth for your entire life, which as we get older, it's so incredibly important to have strong dental hygiene so you can continue chewing those healthy foods. We do that preventatively, and we also go see them when we have cavities. Like, I think it would be so beautiful if, talking about mental health, leaning on mental health resources, collaborating with different modalities on the health and wellness spectrum was just something that we did on a regular basis, before we felt like, it got to be too much.
I think that's why conversations like this are increasingly important, because we have seen the tides turning and the conversation come to the surface more and more. And I appreciate people like yourself are so willing to have this openness, because it's really difficult when you're in those spaces and feel lonely in them. It kind of doubles down on the emotion of the darkness sometimes that can creep up. And that's a part of life. We cannot have the joys without those ultimate lows. Obviously, you've now transformed this into another element of your profession outside of your career on TV. So what do you really start when you sit down with a client when it comes to life coaching? What are kind of the first avenues that you sit down and try and understand about the other individual to reach out that helping hand?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, full transparency, I worked with clients during the pandemic, and then once regular work picked up, I no longer had the bandwidth or capacity to work one-on-one with people, which is why I instead went the app route. But I think with anyone, whether you're a coach or you're just checking in on a friend, I mean, the most important thing is to truly listen. I think so many times, and you've probably seen this when you were also in television, like I have witnessed interviewers do their thing, and I'm like, man, you are missing everything. You are so focused on getting your questions out that you had pre-written that you're actually missing the magic of what the guest is sharing with you. And I feel like that's the same with coaching clients. As a coach, and everyone operates differently, I go in with a plan of what I think will be really beneficial to cover at that particular session. But sometimes a conversation, if you really listen and you take in their body language and their timbre to their voice, there's so much that can be revealed. And like in any good improv lesson or improv class, the most important thing in life is to yes and so I think if you truly listen, you hold a container of space that is safe for them, you've built that trust, and then you kind of see where the conversation goes. But truly in a session, I think the most important thing is to always celebrate the highs, celebrate the positive moments of that past week. And it just kind of sets the tone, gets the dopamine kind of going out in the brain. Because I think so often in life, when things are tough, we often focus on the doom and gloom, but even in the doom and gloom, there's always some silver linings, and there are always moments to be celebrated. And so I really like to start off with highs and just have a moment of gratitude. And it can be as simple as like a great cup of coffee, or, you had a great movie night with your kids, or whatever it is. And then you go into like the biggest challenges, because I think we have to acknowledge where we're struggling. And no one is perfect. We're always kind of learning and taking in new information. And so if we are able to kind of have humility with ourselves, shine a light on where our struggles are, the beautiful thing with that is then you can start to brainstorm and find solutions if that challenge were to arise again. Life is this like amazing, it's sometimes very cyclical, and there's always patterns that show up, especially in our own psychology and our own physical behaviors. And sometimes we don't even realize we're doing them, or that they might be self-sabotaging. So when we look at challenges in client sessions, why was it hard for you to go to the gym? Or, okay, you didn't hit your water intake that week. Like, okay, well, what can we do? And then clients are able to kind of take a step back, recognize their challenges, not see them as failure, instead see them as feedback, and then working alongside them to figure out what are some solutions we can test out and see if maybe those challenges are as pervasive as are they as occurring as much as they were previously. And then you really start to take the data. And I think that's where like the scientist in me is still alive and well, is like, let's just test some stuff out. Let's look at the data. Let's like figure out what's going on here. And I think the beautiful thing with coaching is I'm someone who loves knowledge and studying. I thought I was going to go in and be telling them all this amazing information and tools. But the thing is, as human beings, like, we don't really love to be told what to do. We like to actually come up with them ourselves. And so as a coach, like, it's awesome to have all this knowledge and these tools in my toolkit. But like, if it works for me, it might not work for you. And the thing is the person on the other side of the conversation is incredibly capable, incredibly intelligent, and they probably have the solution within themselves, but they just haven't had like the space or the time, or like an adult sitting in front of them being like, okay, cool. So what are you going to do about that if that happens again? And most of the time they know what to do. They just need a coach to hold them accountable and a coach to hold space for them.
How is it for you when you see somebody walk through that realization and have that moment where they integrate these practices into their lives?
Fucking magical. It's the absolute best. Like I have witnessed some, and it's not because I'm this like amazing coach. It's really just like everyone, I really believe everyone is capable of having a transformative experience. Everyone is capable of achieving their goals. I really believe like we are all capable, but sometimes life gets busy. Sometimes there are other stressors. Sometimes there are other things that need your attention. And so there's no more attention to give to yourself. I know so many incredible women, they give and they give and they give. And then they're so tired at the end of the day. They're like, whatever, I guess I won't go to the gym. Or like, I guess I'll just order takeout because they're depleted. And so as a coach, and by having these sessions, you're essentially guaranteeing to the person that they're going to be carving out space for themselves. And that's what human beings need. They just need a little bit of carved out space, and they can show up fully for themselves. I have seen people like change careers, go back to school, start side businesses, work through their relationships, be able to feel like they're showing up better as moms. Like it's truly, truly incredible what I feel so lucky to have witnessed in the span of like 90 days with some of my clients.
Well, and it's pretty incredible to think that this journey did start with a simple hashtag for yourself. You spoke there, obviously, that a lot of the tools we do know innately within us what we need, and it is that accountability factor. How do you hold yourself accountable now, considering regular life has come full swing, which means you're right back into the thick of it?
Oh yeah. I mean, there was definitely a moment where I was like doing real good during lockdown, and then I got a little lazy, and like that's what I needed at the time. So, that's all good. It's just
Honor that.
it's a season. And then life got really busy, and I just started saying yes to work and yes to opportunities, and I became that yes girl again. I was like, oh no, no, no. This is how we say hello to burnout. Like when I say yes to everything, I'm actually saying no to myself. And so I think it's so important. That was such an important mindset shift that I had to remind myself, was when we say no to something, we're actually saying yes to something else. And I struggle with saying no. I never want to disappoint everyone. I never want to miss out on an opportunity that could, be beneficial to my career or to, being a part of this community. But I had to relearn how to say no, and to say no without guilt or without shame. And then immediately tell myself, okay, by saying no to this, because that feels icky in my body, what is this allowing me to say yes to? Maybe it's having a quiet night at home. Maybe it's the ability to go for a walk. Maybe it's watching trashy TV and ordering pizza. Maybe it's whatever it is. I'd like to always acknowledge what that yes is, because I still to this day struggle with saying no to people. So I had to work on my boundaries, and I feel really proud of where my boundaries are at now. So that's very important as a workaholic, as someone who is, I'm proud to be an ambitious and driven person, but sometimes that can not be so great, because sometimes you got to just chill and recharge. So setting boundaries is really, really important. That like saying no and saying yes. Using a calendar, I block out my time very intensely, both digitally, and then I like to write it down on paper too. And the same way that I was saying, it'd be so great if we looked at going to seek mental health professionals and having them in our corner the way we see dentists. I actually, the way we block out dentist appointments in our calendar, I will block out rest. I will block out buffer time between meetings to allow for a little bit of space in case things start to bleed into one another. I will put daily reminders, hourly reminders on my phone to drink water, because that's one of the things that when life gets busy, I kind of just put it on the back burner. I'm like, I'll just drink coffee all day. It's fine, but it's not fine. So I know myself. I have like the self-awareness to know that drinking water is not my strong suit. So I have daily reminders in my phone. Saying yes to everything is a little bit of a struggle for me. So I've got the trick saying no by saying yes to someone else, blocking out my time, and ensuring that like fun is also scheduled in, whether it's with my girlfriends, whether it's with my partner, whether it's like a me date. I really think it's so important to not just schedule in the dentist appointments and the tax appointments and the work stuff or the whatever. It's important to schedule in the workouts. It's important to schedule in the nice things. And then when it comes to movement, I mean, for me, it's all about joy. Like it is so much easier to stick to our habits when there's pleasure involved. So I've done like so many different types of workouts, and I know which ones I like and I know which ones I don't. And just because everyone else likes I don't know, Zumba, let's say, like my mom loves her Zumba. She loves it. And every time I go with her, she's like, come. And I was like, okay, I'll do it with you. But like, this isn't for me. Like, I don't actually have fun just because it's a great workout. I was like, I don't think it's for me. So with movement, it's so important that it actually brings you joy. And what brings you joy this season might change next season. And so that's okay. So joy is a huge factor for movement, as well as shaking it up, keeping it exciting. And if you can link it up with a friend hang, or you do it with your partner, it makes it so much easier to stick to, because then you've got someone else holding you accountable.
Yeah, and you get that social element as well. And I love that you touch on that.
Special.
Right. And I think it's this huge misconception sometimes in fitness that it has to look a certain way. And it's like for yourself and myself, we're gifted with these bodies that are functioning and working for us. We might as well find something that celebrates that, but it doesn't need to be a punishment that you need to have a vacation from. And I think that's sometimes where we have a disconnect.
Gosh, I mean, I think so many of us have been there where we work out to burn a certain amount of calories, and we do it for that reason alone, or we work out because we're going to go have a nice big dinner later, or we work out because we've got a vacation coming. None of those reasons are bad, but like, can those be secondary or tertiary reasons? Like, can the first one be because it makes you feel amazing and empowered and like an absolute badass? Maybe not before, maybe not even during, but check in on how you feel after workout. Can that be the reason you go, rather than like, looking at your Apple Watch and being like, nice? I don't mind if that also gets you excited, but it'd be so great if we could all collectively like go to the gym because we know it's going to make us feel better or sleep better or be more creative that day or have more energy or be nicer to the people in our lives because we've let out some steam.
1,000%. I think it's a big thing. You see a lot of posts about consistency, and they think almost like you're a drill sergeant of self. This is why I'm consistent. But you're like, no, the consistency happens because for myself, and I can only speak for myself, but I know that many people feel this way. It's the mental health capacity that you gain out of moving your body. We know that emotions are energy and motion. It helps it flow through you when sometimes we have that feeling it all gets stuck almost in the solar plexus. Chloe, I want you to speak to people. We talked about obviously your journey with self, and it is a journey. We're all on the ride. We have amazing tools available to us, but we know that sometimes when reaching out, and even for yourself, you didn't even necessarily have an awareness over your state right away. So what would you say with those that are maybe struggling to take that first step to honor how they're feeling and really do something for their sense of self and well-being?
100%. Look, if you're in it right now, friends, just know that you are not alone. Just know that like you are cared for and like you can get through this. And I think the first step is really just being honest with yourself. And like, again, like I'm not a mental health professional, so everything I share is just based on my own personal experiences and things I've learned. So feel free to take this with a grain of salt. But I lived for so many years in absolute denial that I was not feeling well. And I feel like I missed out on some really amazing moments in life because of that. And I wish I could go back in time and tell that younger version of me. And I know it's so cheesy, but like, it is okay not to be okay. It doesn't make you weak. If anything, it makes you strong to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, I am incredible, but I am struggling right now. And I think sometimes the first step, if you're not comfortable sharing it with somebody else, and that's okay, maybe just try taking pen to paper, and if you don't like what comes out, don't judge it. Just rip the paper apart and throw it away. But at least it got out of your brain and onto paper. And then maybe that next step will be telling someone you really care about that you're not feeling well. Or maybe you reach out to someone you actually don't know. And, the beautiful thing, again, silver lining post-pandemic is there are so many virtual care providers now that even if, you are struggling and even just leaving the house feels too hard, you can make an appointment online and connect with someone. And so I think just first and foremost, just you are amazing. Acknowledge how you're feeling, know that it's okay to be feeling the way you're feeling and that it doesn't have to stay this way. First step is just kind of leaning on somebody else and knowing that like it might be a journey, it might be challenging, and then figuring out some simple things you can do in your daily life that bring you joy. And if going to the gym feels too big and too daunting, maybe it's just going for a walk even around the block, or parking one block away from work rather than in the parking lot, and just sneaking in a little bit of movement, a little bit of fresh air. And it doesn't need to be an overhaul of your whole life. Like, what are some tiny, tiny little hacks you can do in your life to feel better? And I'm currently doing another course right now on sleep, stress, and recovery. And it's actually amazing, the research out there that ties sleep quality and quantity with our overall well-being. And sleep is something that I long sacrificed. I was like, I don't need to sleep. I need to hustle. I need to grind. I've got my day job. I've got my side hustle. I've got this, I've got that. And I was like, I wore it like a badge of honor that I would sacrifice sleep so that I could do all these things. And now I'm looking at the research and I'm reading these books and I'm doing this course and I was like, oh my gosh, we need to make sleep sexy. We need to treat it with respect, because it truly can have amazing beneficial effects to our overall well-being. So again, no surprise here, I struggled with sleep, but now I've got a really awesome sleep routine, and feel free to take any of this if you want and just try one tonight. I, like I do with my reminders to drink water, I have a start getting ready for bed reminder, because sometimes I can watch too much Drag Race because I love it so much.
Happens to the best of us.
Yeah. So like, and it's not ridiculous, but like an hour before bed, no more technology, no more phone, no more TV. I read a book, and it's not like some personal development book. I'm going to change my life, because those before bed can be very stimulating. I like to read like trashy romance novels. Like, that's what I like to read before bed. It just kind of simmers me down. I've got a white noise machine. I've got some lavender essential oils. I've got pajamas that make me feel excited to go to bed. Like, all of these little things make sleep really exciting, enticing, relaxing. And it's like, how can you set your environment up for success? I mean, I could go on and on and on and on, but just, if you're not feeling good, you're good, you're good, you're good, you're good. You can be okay. You can be okay. And just know that you're not alone. And there really are resources out there.
I love so many of those points you made. Pen to paper, absolutely. And I'm a one that holds on to the uglies. I've kept a journal since 2014. And I have to say,
hold on to the uglies?
I hold on to those uglies because it's so nice when you take a look back and you've moved through it. And then you literally have factual evidence. Yes, I can. And sometimes we need that reminder when we're feeling the dark and gloomies. As well, I love that you talk about it could just be parking your car in a different spot. Oftentimes when we want that shift, we want 0 to 1,000. It's like literally go a millimeter. You will thank yourself for taking it that steady, because more than likely it's going to mean the momentum builds. And then sleep, technology, huge. I think that's the biggest issue that we have right now for a lot of people. And even I have to smack my own hand sometime. Big recommendation, put the phone on the other side of the room. Don't plug it in next to your bed if it's a temptation for you, because mentally your hand's going to creep there without you even intending. So I so appreciate those tips. The last thing I'd love to hear from you, Chloe, and we kind of end every ATFW podcast this way. Oftentimes in life, we collect these little nuggets of wisdom that maybe when they're said to us initially, we don't realize how impactful they are. So what would be something that you live by, whether it be a mantra or a quote that you hold dear for a foundation of your life?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, honestly, everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear is a huge one. I think sometimes we let fear stop us from things that could be exciting or risky or beneficial or new or uncertain. And I really think fear is like excitement without breath. So if you're feeling fearful of a certain situation, just take a couple deep breaths and see how it lands. Because I mean, oh my gosh, we are so good at self-sabotaging and convincing ourselves of why we shouldn't do something because it feels a little bit unknown and a little bit scary. But imagine, what if you could just test the waters and see what happens if you actually say yes, acknowledge the fear, breathe into it, turn it into excitement, and just take a chance on yourself. And if it doesn't work out, or the thing that scared you actually is scary, then cool. Now you know we don't do that.
That was gorgeous. Fear is excitement without breath. Chloe Wilde, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Chrissy.
You've just listened to All Things Fitness and Wellness, the Celebrity Series. This episode was brought to you by Fitness World. Your fitness, your way. Visit fitnessworld.ca. New episodes of the Industry Series drop every Monday and the Celebrity Series every Wednesday. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you never miss out on hearing from industry thought leaders and influencers. We're on a mission to help everyone live a life fit and well.